Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the latest news and current events. I'm your host, Walter. Today, we're going to explore the ongoing situation with Iran and the recent testimony of Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard appeared before lawmakers for a second day, facing questions about the Iran war's objectives and the Trump administration's decision-making process. According to reports, Gabbard's testimony seemed to shield the Trump administration, sparking controversy and debate among politicians and pundits alike. One of the key takeaways from her testimony was the omission of a passage regarding Iran's nuclear enrichment program. Initially, Gabbard was supposed to say that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated during last year's strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. However, she skipped this part during her opening remarks, only to confirm later that this was indeed the assessment of the intelligence community. GOP Rep. Rick Crawford of Arkansas, the House Intelligence Committee chairman, commended President Trump for taking decisive action against Iran, stating that the case for why action was needed was made clear to lawmakers in classified briefings. Crawford emphasized that Iran is committed to acquiring a nuclear weapon. On the other hand, Democratic lawmakers raised concerns about the administration's claims of an imminent threat posed by Iran, with some arguing that the evidence presented does not support this assertion. As the situation with Iran continues to unfold, President Trump hasn't made up his mind yet on whether he wants to send American forces into Iran and seize the country's nuclear material, which would be a very dangerous operation. The Pentagon has prepared multiple options for the president as potential next steps in the Iran war. We'll be keeping a close eye on this developing story and providing updates as more information becomes available. For now, it's clear that the situation with Iran remains complex and contentious, with many questions still unanswered. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. I'm your host, Walter. We're continuing our discussion on global trade, and today we have 2 significant stories that caught our attention. First, let's take a look at the developments in the UK, where the government has announced new trade tariffs on steel imports. This move is aimed at protecting the domestic steel industry, which has been struggling with cheap imports from other countries. According to reports, the UK government will impose a 15% tariff on certain steel products, effective immediately. The decision has been welcomed by the steel industry, but critics argue that it could lead to retaliatory measures from other countries and potentially harm the UK's trade relationships. Meanwhile, in Europe, the European Parliament's Trade Committee has given its approval to a crucial trade pact with the US. The agreement, known as the Turnberry Agreement, aims to reduce tariffs on industrial goods and promote transatlantic trade. However, the deal has been delayed due to concerns over US tariffs on EU steel exports. MEPs have introduced a mechanism to suspend the agreement if the US imposes new tariffs on any EU country because of their foreign policy decisions. The committee has also secured promises from the US to shorten the list of items containing steel that are subject to high tariffs. It's worth noting that the EU-US trade pact has been a long time in the making, and its ratification has been delayed by various factors, including tariff threats by the US president. However, if approved, the deal could bring significant benefits to both sides, including increased trade and investment. As we continue to follow these developments, it's essential to consider the potential implications of these decisions on global trade. Will the UK's tariffs on steel imports lead to a trade war with other countries? And will the EU-US trade pact be able to withstand the challenges posed by US tariff policies? These are just some of the questions we'll be exploring in the coming days and weeks. For now, let's take a closer look at the potential consequences of these decisions and what they might mean for businesses and consumers around the world. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're wrapping up today's show with a look at the latest news from Washington, D.C. and beyond. In a significant development, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee has advanced the nomination of Senator Markwayne Mullin to lead the Department of Homeland Security. This move comes despite reservations from Democrats and even the committee's Republican chair, Senator Rand Paul. The nomination process has been marked by intense questioning and controversy, with some lawmakers expressing concerns about Mullen's experience and temperament for the role. During his confirmation hearing, Mullen faced tough questions about his leadership style and his plans for the department. Despite these challenges, the committee ultimately voted to move his nomination forward. Meanwhile, in related news, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been defending the Pentagon's $200 billion funding request for the ongoing war against Iran. Hegseth has also been critical of European allies and the media, accusing them of being ungrateful and dishonest. In other international news, European leaders are meeting to discuss the ongoing conflict and its implications for global security. The situation remains complex and multifaceted, with many different players and interests at stake. As we close out today's show, it's clear that there are many significant developments unfolding in the world of politics and international relations. We'll be keeping a close eye on these stories and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.